Hi, it's Lee and welcome to the Tesla Economist. We're hearing that Tesla started manufacturing the 4680 cell in Berlin. The Brandenburg economics minister gave a speech to the state parliament saying that the plant was now operational. This is from the new battery factory that Tesla started building a year ago. Last we'd heard was that a lot of the equipment from the Berlin 4680 factory had been sent to Texas, as they wanted to accelerate the 4680 production line there first, presumably due to the subsidies and tax credits. I did not at all expect the 4680 line in Berlin to become operational this soon at all, whatever stage it's at. It's good to see some progress happening there. The initial phase is going to be 100 gigawatt hours a year apparently, the same as what we're expecting for Texas, which will likely also comprise of 4 lines, each with 25 gigawatt hour a year capacities. Now, you might wonder, that is a really high number of cells, and you'd be right. With the current Model Y 4680 batteries, it's enough cells to make around 1.4 million Model Ys, which starts to make you wonder, do these new factories have a larger capacity than the smaller, less advanced Model Y factory in Shanghai? Possibly. Many people certainly consider that a possibility, justifiably too, given they're using front castings and structural packs, along with other manufacturing advances. Of course, I don't expect this factory to start at a run rate of 100 gigawatt hours a year. I suspect it'll be similar to Texas, and they'll start with one line and then move on to the next. However, even when the first line is at capacity, that's 25 gigawatt hours a year, which is over 300,000 Model Ys a year, on top of the 180,000 or so a year 2170 cells potentially, taking the capacity to 500,000 Model Ys a year. But we don't know at all how long these lines will take to ramp up. Elon said on Q4 earnings call that they won't be ramping up until sometime in 2024. We do tend to get updates on the progress though, although I really wish someone would ask what is the progress with the dry battery electrode. I seem to be the only one of a few people who care, but as far as I can tell, if we want to transition the world, then the only way to make close to enough cells fast enough is to make the cells with dry battery electrodes, or else it is simply too capital intensive, even using LFP cells. On top of that, the production is too slow unless they're using a tabless design too. It doesn't stop there either. The article goes on to suggest that according to Elon, the production number could rise to 250 to 300 gigawatt hours a year. As it does sound like there's going to be a far greater cell count than vehicles produced, then it makes you wonder what else these cells might be used for. Might we expect to see a megapack factory in Germany too, using 4680 cells? Or maybe a compact factory? Either way, we might expect a gross profit of approximately $300 per kilowatt hour for a 4680 cell, due to them potentially getting costs down to as low as Elon says. Well, when you multiply $300 per kilowatt hour by 100 gigawatt hours a year, then it comes in at around $30 billion gross profit a year. That's obviously a massive number, probably about 50% more than this year's auto gross profit, which will make a significant difference. Even if it takes Tesla a few years to get there, these are big numbers. However, due to the subsidies in the US, Tesla get an additional $45 per kilowatt hour of cell they produce. Then the tax credits are the equivalent of a further $100 or so off per kilowatt hour, which is why they're obviously prioritizing Texas over Berlin. I don't know what the bottleneck is for getting these lines up. They may be limited in engineers and want all hands on deck in Texas before moving to Berlin. And perhaps Tesla will want to get all the Texas lines running first before they can move to Berlin, as there may be certain opportunity costs. We were basically told on the earnings call in Q4 not to expect much growth for the year relative to that Q4 production, with a guidance of 1.8 million for 2023. But if we start seeing 4680 lines ramping, then that could all change. And perhaps a lot of the Uber bulls were right, and Elon was seriously sandbagging about production for 2023. In reality, the actual production number for the year isn't really that important in the scheme of things. I'd be much more interested to see how high they can actually ramp production by the end of the year, especially if they have 4680 lines in Texas running and seeing the progress in Berlin. It does sound like they're incredibly complicated lines though, so it'll be interesting to see how quickly they can rinse and repeat and getting new lines up and running. The only 4680 cells we have actually seen for ourselves that have been torn down, dissected and tested have actually only been from the Cato Road facility in Fremont, which was just a pilot line with a 10 gigawatt hour a year capacity. When tested, we discovered that the energy density wasn't even up to the 2170 cell, due to there being no silicon in the anode. They were still using cobalt in the cathode, and the cathode was not using the dry battery electrode process yet. However, the anode was. This was the test line though, and there is possibility that Tesla were more concerned with perhaps the tabless design or general manufacturing of the cells. As Elon said, it is now an A architecture but C chemistry. So our expectations are that this will eventually change and improve. Over what time frame? People are guessing years perhaps, to get to that level that we were told on Battery Day, as that was somewhat indicated then. However, we do hope to see an upgrade in energy density for the Texas lines, which might just be the addition of silicon in the anode. We also expect to see the dry battery electrode for the cathode, which may very well be happening at the new cathode plant on site in Texas. It is essential that Tesla have increased the energy density for the cells later this year, as a higher energy density version of the 4680 will be required to power the almighty Cybertruck, aiming to start production later in the year. It's possible that Tesla may not be using silicon in the anode for the Model Y 4680 cells, and there may be different lines producing different cells, given there are 4 lines. Silicon improves the energy density of the cells, but it also meant the cells degrade quite a bit faster. However, I don't really see degradation as an issue for the Model Y anyway, so not sure. I think there is a possibility that the current 4680 Model Y, or all-wheel drive standard range, as it's also referred to, may just be temporary until the Texas 4680 line is in production with higher energy density cells. This means that Tesla will be able to produce the long-range version from Texas with 4680 cells, which will obviously sell for more and increase profit and demand, and within time, hopefully be able to even get more range than the existing Model Y long range that currently uses 2170 cells. Anyway, it is still possibly early days for the 4680 cells, but it's good to see and hear some progress, and helps reinforce that they are going to happen. The last update we had on progress was in December at a run rate of 4 gigawatt hours a year in Cato Road, which is around 40% capacity of that line. So if we start getting some updates on what rate they're at with Texas, we can start to get an idea of how long it might take until we get some real progress. Unfortunately, 4 gigawatt hours a year is only enough cells for about 50,000 Model Ys currently, which I was quite disappointed with, especially after we were told in Q2 earnings call last year to expect high volume production by the end of Q4. I guess it's just going to take time, and I need to be more patient. But when you start throwing around numbers, when you have 100 or 200 gigawatt hours a year of high energy density nickel cells, then profits start to look very good. Not to mention another 100 gigawatt hour a year 4680 factory coming in Giga, Nevada, and maybe the biggest one yet potentially in Mexico. Elon says they expect to get the cost down for the 4680 cell to as low as $70 a kilowatt hour and save on cost further with structural packs and front and rear castings. Then each cell is going to be so profitable. It's what I've been waiting to see, to take Tesla to the next level. From there, we hope it would just be a matter of rinse and repeat in getting more of these battery cell lines up. Then a new compact model or robotaxi, a van, and ample cells for energy. Of course, a backlog of close to 2 million Cybertrucks to fulfill in the meantime. Which is why, in Texas, the balance of 100 gigawatt hours a year is about right for the Cybertruck and Model Y factories there. So I would still be curious to see what the 100 gigawatt hours a year for Berlin might actually be for. Anyway, as always, I look forward to another 4680 update. Perhaps something will be mentioned on Investor Day, but I would guess more likely an update around the Q1 earnings call. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.